You know you're doing it again, right? Doing what? That thing where you pretend not to notice me. I laughed. I made it sound easy. I don't know what you're talking about. She tilted her head. Just a little. Just enough. Yeah, you do. And then she smiled, and I looked away first. That was the problem. That had always been the problem. I kept looking away first. And I kept telling myself it was because she was too bright to stare at directly, the way you're not supposed to look at the sun. I told myself it was just how she was. Intense, magnetic, the kind of woman who made a whole room lean slightly in her direction without even trying. I told myself it didn't mean anything. I was so good at telling myself things. We met at the beginning of junior year, in the kind of way that feels like nothing at the time and everything in retrospect. She sat down next to me in Professor Langley's seminar, American Literature, Tuesday and Thursday mornings, the class where everyone tried to sound smarter than they were. And she dropped her tote bag on the floor, pulled out a notebook covered in small drawings along the margins, and said without looking at me, "I hope you're not one of those people who underlines in other people's books." I blinked. What? The library copies? She finally turned. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black, and she had this way of looking at you like she was reading something written just behind your face. Someone underlined half of beloved in green marker. It's a crime. I use sticky notes, I said. She considered that acceptable. That was it. That was how it started. With library etiquette and Toni Morrison and a notebook full of small hand-drawn stars. Her name was Dani, and within 3 weeks, she was the person I texted when something funny happened. Within 6 weeks, she was the person I looked for first when I walked into any room. By the time November rolled around, she was just there, constantly. In the quiet way that important things settle into your life before you think to name them. We had the same rhythm, me and Dani. We'd stay in the campus library until they kicked us out at midnight, then walk back across the quad complaining about the cold even though neither of us ever wore a proper coat. We'd sit on the floor of her dorm room with her tiny speaker playing something low and something warm and talk about everything and nothing in that specific order. She was the kind of person who remembered details, not the big things, not your birthday or your GPA, the small things. She remembered that I hated the smell of lavender, that I always fidgeted with my left sleeve when I was nervous, that I took exactly 2 sips of coffee before I could hold a real conversation. No one had ever paid that kind of attention to me before. I told myself it meant she was a good friend. I was so committed to that story. The thing about Dani was that she flirted like it was a second language she'd grown up speaking. Easily, naturally, with everyone. She'd lean into you when she laughed. She'd find excuses to touch your arm, your shoulder, the back of your hand. She'd say things like, "You look unfairly good today," with the same casual energy other people used to say, "Nice weather." So when she did it to me, I categorized it, filed it under. That's just how she is. That's just Dani. I was incredibly, embarrassingly wrong. It was a Tuesday in February when I first felt it, really felt it, and couldn't explain it away. We were at Maya's apartment. A small gathering, 10 or 12 people, the kind of low-key Friday night that somehow becomes the night you remember for years. Someone had put a playlist on too loud. There were candles everywhere because Maya believed ambience was a personality trait. Dani was across the room sitting on the kitchen counter talking to our friend Priya. She was wearing this oversized rust-colored sweater and she had her hair down. She almost never wore it down, and she was laughing at something Priya said, really laughing, hilarious. Her head tilted back, one hand pressed flat against her chest like she needed to hold herself together. I watched her for too long. I knew I was watching her for too long. I felt it happening in real time and I couldn't make myself stop, and then she looked across the room, directly at me, like she knew, like she'd felt it. She didn't look away. She just smiled. Slow and warm and slightly private, like the smile was only for me. I looked down at my drink. My heart was doing something embarrassing. I told myself it was the wine. The next morning, lying in my own bed, I replayed that smile approximately 40 times and told myself a different story each time. She was just being friendly. She was a little drunk. She smiled at everyone like that. I was projecting. I was tired. I needed to drink more water and sleep more and think about this less, but the truth I kept pressing my hand down over, trying to muffle, was simpler and scarier than any of those explanations. I liked the way she looked at me. I liked it more than I'd ever liked anything. In the weeks that followed, I became a student of her without meaning to. I started noticing things I hadn't let myself notice before. The way she got quieter when she was actually thinking hard, not louder, which was the opposite of almost everyone else I knew. The way she held a pen sort of sideways, resting it against her index finger, and the way she'd tap it against her notebook when she was listening to something she disagreed with. I noticed the way she said my name, just my name, Jess. But she said it differently depending on what she meant. Quick and bright when she was excited, slower when she was being serious. And sometimes she said it like it was the only word in a sentence that needed to exist. Like she was just confirming something to herself. I hated that I noticed. I hated more that I couldn't stop. I started making small, pathetic adjustments. I'd sit a little farther from her in the library. I'd let a beat pass before I answered her text so she wouldn't think I'd been waiting. I started turning down plans with excuses that were thin enough to be embarrassing. I have a paper, I'm tired, I told Maya I'd go to her thing, all because spending time with her felt like standing too close to something dangerous. Not dangerous because she was scary. Dangerous because being near her was starting to feel like the most comfortable I'd felt anywhere, and I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know where to put it. It didn't fit into any category I'd built for myself. Priya noticed before I did. Or rather, she noticed what I was doing and connected the dots I was refusing to draw. "You've been weird," she said one afternoon in the student center. "I'm always weird. Differently weird, specifically around Danny weird." I took a long sip of my coffee. "I don't know what you're talking about." Priya looked at me for a moment with the particular expression she used when she was deciding whether or not to push. She decided not to, that time, but I felt it. The question she didn't ask. It sat between us like a hell breath. March came and everything got slower and louder at the same time, slower because we were both deep in thesis season. Long library days, late nights, the specific tunnel vision that comes from staring at the same 20 pages until the words stop looking like words. Louder because all that quiet, all that proximity, all those hours sitting across from each other in the amber light of the 4th floor reading room. It was accumulating into something I didn't have a name for. Something that pressed against the inside of my ribs every time she pushed a snack across the table toward me without looking up from her laptop. Every time she read something out loud because she knew I liked hearing ideas spoken before seeing them written. Every time she said goodnight outside the library and the cold air made her breath visible. And I watched it disappear and felt something I had no business feeling. I was managing it. Barely. And then came the night of Priya's birthday dinner. 12 of us at a Thai place near campus. Loud, crowded, everyone talking over everyone. The kind of dinner that feels like being inside a hug. Danny was sitting next to me because we always sat next to each other, and I hadn't figured out how to stop that without explaining why. The food came. Someone made a toast. At some point, Danny leaned over to say something in my ear, just so I could hear her over the noise, and her shoulder pressed against mine, her voice dropped, and she said, "I'm glad you came tonight. I was worried you were going to cancel again." And something about it, the low register of her voice, the specific way she said it, like my presence actually mattered, made my throat go tight. "I wasn't going to cancel," I said. "You've been canceling a lot." She pulled back just enough to look at me, not accusatory, just honest. "I notice when you're not around, Jess." I didn't answer. I couldn't. She held my gaze for 1 second longer than comfortable, then turned back to the table. I stared at my plate. "I notice when you're not around." I turned those words over for the rest of the night. I was still turning them over when I got home, when I changed into pajamas, when I lay on my ceiling staring at the dark. I replayed them until they stopped sounding like language and started sounding like something else. Something I was too frightened to translate. The next week was the fundraiser showcase. Our department's annual event, student work displayed in the arts building, presentations, the kind of organized chaos that required all hands on deck. Our whole friend group had signed up to help set up, and I'd almost backed out twice before making myself go. Danny found me immediately. She always found me immediately. It was one of the things about her that I'd stopped pretending was coincidental. We were moving folding chairs together, the terrible metal kind that always pinch your fingers, and we fell into that easy rhythm we had, the one where we didn't need to talk to coordinate, where we just moved around each other without collision like we'd been doing it for years. You've been quiet, she said, not accusing, just observing. I'm always quiet. You're usually quiet at the world. This week you've been quiet at me. There it was, direct, precise, unapologetic. I set a chair down. I looked at her. She was watching me with those dark eyes that always seemed to see more than I wanted them to. I'm fine, I said.
You won't believe me.
She tilted her head.
He's here.
You said that the same way you said it in October when you had lost your wallet and spent 3 hours pretending you hadn't. I laughed before I could stop myself. God. She remembered everything. I'm fine, I said again, softer this time, aware of how little that word was carrying. She looked at me for another long moment, then, okay, but the way she said it, quiet, careful, made it sound like she was saying something else entirely, like she was giving me room, like she was waiting. Later that night, after the event wound down, a group of us ended up in the courtyard outside the arts building. It was cold, but no one wanted to leave yet. That specific reluctance that comes at the end of nights that have been good. Someone had grabbed bottles of cheap wine from the reception table. The string lights were still on. And then Priya, with the chaotic energy she reserved for moments that mattered, looked between me and Danny and said, "Okay, so no one's going to say it." "Say what?" Maya asked. Priya gestured vaguely at both of us. "This, whatever this is." "Priya," I said. "I'm just saying." "Priya. I'm just saying that everyone sees it." And then Danny, who had been quiet for this entire exchange, who had been watching me while Priya talked, leaned in and kissed me, not dramatically, not with warning, just leaned in. Her hand coming up to my jaw like she'd been thinking about exactly where to put it, and kissed me in front of Priya and Maya and everyone, in the cold courtyard light. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. When she pulled back, she looked at me with this expression I'd never seen on her before. Open, nervous, completely unguarded. "I've been trying to say it for 4 months, she said quietly. And I didn't know how, so... The courtyard was very silent. My heart was not, but before we go further, if you've made it this far, you know this feeling. That specific terror of realizing you've been trying not to want something that was right in front of you the whole time. Click the like button right now. It genuinely helps me keep bringing stories like this one to you. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe and hit the bell. YouTube will let you know the moment a new story goes up. Now tell me in the comments, have you ever convinced yourself that what you were feeling wasn't real, only to realize you'd been right the whole time? Tell me your version. I read every single one. And drop your city to I'll heart every single comment. Now, back to Jess. I didn't know what to do with my own face. I was aware of that, of standing there with my expression doing something completely beyond my control while Priya made a sound behind me that could only be described as vindicated, and Maya whispered something that I didn't catch because the only thing I could hear clearly was my own heartbeat. "You don't have to say anything right now," Danny said. Still quiet, still unguarded. I couldn't keep not saying it. I noticed she was still holding my face, just barely, just her fingertips, light at the edge of my jaw, like she was giving me every opportunity to step back. I didn't step back. 4 months, I said. She almost smiled. 4.5, if I'm being honest. "Danny, I know. I stopped. Started again. I've been so convinced I was imagining it. You weren't. I thought it was just how you were. With everyone." She shook her head. "Slow and certain. Not like this, not even close to like this." Something shifted in my chest. Some mechanism I'd been holding under pressure for months, holding with both hands, finally slipped. I thought about every time I'd looked away first. Every excuse I'd made, every plan I'd turned down because being around her was becoming too much to pretend about. I thought about the library at midnight and the walks across the cold quad and the rust-colored sweater and the way she said my name like it was the only word in the sentence. I thought about how terrifying it was, this specific shape of feeling, and how much more terrifying it would be to name it and have it not be mutual, and how for 4.5 months I'd chosen the first kind of fear over the second kind. I thought about how she'd kissed me in front of everyone, not as a joke, not as a question, as an answer to something she'd already decided she was certain about, and I thought, what am I actually protecting myself from at this point? The thing is, I said slowly, I've been canceling plans because being around you was getting... I searched for the word. Complicated. Complicated how? Complicated, like I couldn't figure out where to look when you laughed. She was very still, Jess. Complicated, like I memorized the way you hold your pen and I didn't know what to do with that. Jess. Complicated, like I'm terrified right now and I don't actually want to be anywhere else. She breathed out. It was shakier than I expected. And somehow that undid me more than anything. The idea that she'd been holding her breath too, that she'd been scared too, that the confidence of that kiss had taken something out of her. I've been trying to be patient, she said. I didn't want to push. I know you process things on your own schedule, and She paused. I just couldn't keep pretending I was fine with just being your friend when I haven't thought of you as just my friend in a very long time. The string lights were still on. The cold was still there. Somewhere behind me, Priya and Maya had very tactfully started a conversation about nothing with everyone else, giving us this small pocket of near privacy in the middle of a courtyard. I thought about what it meant to choose something that scared you. Not in the abstract, in the specific, in the concrete, present tense, standing right in front of you sense. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. This isn't something I need you to know that I know, she said, gently. You don't have to explain all of it right now, but I want to. I want to be honest with you about the fact that I'm scared and I don't entirely know what any of this means yet. And I stopped, looked at her. I also know that every time I've tried to put distance between us this semester, I felt worse, not better. And I think that's telling me something. The almost smile became a real one, and it was different from every smile I'd catalogued before. Softer somehow. Less performed. Like she was letting me see the version of her face she usually kept just slightly out of reach. Yeah, she said. I think it is. 3 weeks later, I called my sister. She was the first person in my family I told any version of the truth I'd been unpacking in the weeks since that courtyard. We talked for almost 2 hours. She was quiet in the right places and asked good questions, and at the end of it she said, I just want you to be happy. That's the whole thing. That's the entire thing. My mother was harder. She had questions I didn't have clean answers to. She had a long silence on the phone that I didn't know how to read. She said she needed time. I told her I understood. I told her I'd give her whatever she needed, and I meant it. But I also knew, with a clarity I hadn't had about anything in a long time, that I wasn't going to put myself back in the version of my life where I'd been managing and pretending and canceling plans and looking away first. I'd been so careful for so long. Careful with my feelings, careful with my words, careful about how much space I allowed myself to take up. And I understood standing on the other side of it that careful and safe weren't the same thing. Careful had kept me comfortable. It had also kept me half present in my own life. Danny met me for coffee after that phone call. She was already there when I arrived. She was always early, one of those details I'd memorized. And she looked up from her book when I walked in, and she just read my face. She was so good at reading my face. How'd it go? She asked. I sat down, wrapped both hands around the mug she'd already ordered for me. My sister cried. I said, in a good way, my mom needs more time. I paused. She loves me. She just needs more time. Danny nodded, not rushing, not filling the space with reassurance I didn't need. And, she said quietly, because she knew there was an and I'm okay, I said. I'm actually okay. I looked at her across the small table, across the steam from the coffee, across 4.5 months of almost. I thought losing things would feel worse than this. I thought the cost would be, I don't know, I thought it would be bigger. Maybe it gets bigger, she said, honest. Maybe your mom needs more time than you think. Maybe. Probably. I thought about it. But I also know that the version of me who was managing everything and feeling nothing was much lonelier than I admitted. And this, I gestured between us, this version of my life is smaller in some ways and so much more real. She reached across the table, just her hand on mine, fingers loose, not possessive, just present. You don't have to make it make sense right now, she said. I know. I turned my hand over, held hers back. I wanted you to know that I don't regret it. Any of it, even the scary parts, even the parts that cost something. She didn't say anything for a moment then. I notice when you're not around. I laughed, real, surprised, warm. I know, I said. I know you do. Some things, when you finally stop fighting them, feel less like falling and more like landing, like your body recognizing a place it's been trying to get to for a very long time. That was what it felt like. Sitting in that coffee shop, hands linked across a small table, the whole complicated, costly, true shape of my own life, arranged around me for the first time without apology. Not perfect, not finished, but mine, entirely, finally mine. I spent so long looking away first. I thought I was protecting myself. I thought careful was the same thing as safe. I thought keeping the feeling small meant it couldn't hurt me. What I didn't understand then, what I know now, is that the things we spend the most energy not feeling are usually the things most worth feeling. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't a grand gesture in front of everyone. Sometimes it's just stopping, turning around, staying. If this story landed somewhere real for you, if you've ever been the person looking away first, type in Tara in the comments. So I know you made it here with me. And if you want to stay for the next one, there's a video on your screen right now. A big kiss and see you in the next story.